93.7 The Ticket. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Black Shirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
There we go. There we go. Good morning. Special Sunday. Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard, will service all your painful needs, MRI options, and a unique game plan set after they do your reading. So we appreciate their support, and also I appreciate them always taking care of me and other people that I know that I send there all the time. Customer service is really good, and the location is easy access for me. So we appreciate their support, but we're inside the huddle again. And also, Harrison, this is a unique show because this is the first one or the last one we'll do before, obviously, Matt Rule's first game. You know, we've been doing this for a while, for about a month and a half, 2 months. And it's always been, we're so many days away, We're only 4 days away. So I don't know how many hours that is. It was 72 hours is 3 days. So we're 96 hours away approximately, right? 4 days. Probably a little bit more, maybe a little bit over 100 hours away before Nebraska takes on the Gophers, the Golden Gophers, as they like to call themselves, up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, stadium in Dinkytown. So it should be a good live atmosphere on a Thursday night. And you know, one of the big things that we talked about last week was looking forward to the first depth chart. We talked about it on Old School all week, and we talked about it last week on Inside the Huddle, just to see where guys are at and try to match up maybe some of the things that we heard in the very unique spring, right, Harrison, to say the least, right? When you bring in 39, new faces, which normally happens, right? And the thing that was always funny is that, when Deion, took the job in Colorado and everybody worried about what, Colorado was doing or what Deion was doing. And then he says, I'm, bringing my baggage and bringing Louis or whatever it is. And he pretty much looked at it probably was like, there are only going to be about 5 of you after a couple weeks, right? And there was a couple kids that left, went in the portal, and came back, so forth and so on. And he had the quote for the one, I think alumni's son is like, man, you're 6'8", 310 pounds, but, and you got a lot of talent, quickness, but, you should go, you ain't starting here. Mm-hmm. And there's that way, which was, it seems like he flipped over 90% of the roster.
Which, to be fair, you won one game last year.
1-11, but also maybe his delivery was more public. But, Deion's he's an iconic figure. He's not just a good football player that happens to be a coach. He is one of the top 10 players, and that's being of all time to ever play the game. One of the top 10 personalities. First of all, he might be the biggest personality to play football. As far as he was NIL and branding way before. I mean, he thought about it in the dorm and called himself Primetime. And everything he's done, he's hit a home run at. So, and then also the social media presence, right? And you look at, I'm not big into social media and what it means, but if you look at the impressions and how much money he's made Colorado already from branding, through Nike, sold out the spring game, even when it was snowing, sold out the first, I think, half the season overnight. So he's already, pretty much paid for himself going there. And so for when he turns over the team, it's a big problem. And then now with Nebraska, we did the same thing. Different. And Matt Rule came in and said, look, I'm going to give you an option to be here, but if you don't, then, I'm not going to beg for you to be here. And it's going to be different. And it has been different. And a lot of new faces have came, and some familiar faces or names that we maybe thought were going to be in the future weren't here. We had guys that went through the whole offseason and have our first depth chart, and we're going to go over, we got 2 big segments and then 1 small. And then I think the last segment we're going to do before we send them off to Pete Ferguson, we're going to do, game prediction and then predict some of the more notable games of, Thursday night.
Okay.
Obviously the Florida-Utah game is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little surprised Florida's not ranked just because of his Florida. But, look, they weren't very good last year, but they supposedly they had the number 4 pick in the draft, and then they're supposed to be even better this year. So I'm surprised they're not ranked considering, Florida always gets the benefit of the doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're looking at this depth chart here, which is, I think the offensive line is pretty much rinse and repeat, right? Except for Ben Scott has came in. He was one of the, I felt like he might be the biggest transfer portal get because it took a little while, right? I think Coach Raiola has a good relationship with him prior to, or at least they have the Hawaii connection, obviously with Dom is his older brother, being obviously one of the better players that come from the Hawaii area, came to Nebraska, had success. Ben Scott was a very successful player at Arizona State in his own right. I know they had like inroads on him the year before, and Coach Raiola, for whatever reason, wasn't allowed to go out and pursue that, so forth and so on. But I think he's came here, and from a production standpoint and a standard standpoint and a leadership standpoint, he's been more or as advertised and then some. So when you look at the starting lineup, I always like to look at offensive line center on out. He's the center. His backup is Justin Evans Jenkins, who is from New Jersey, who I think was a good recruit as well. He's a state champion wrestler, and he looks like a decent center, right? And so if you need to move Ben Scott to guard, I think he could do well, right? But lacks the experience of a
you don't necessarily want a red shirt,
right?
Freshman,
right? It's a big drop off from a all Pac-12 second team center coming to the Big Ten, to a guy that's never taken a snap, but Ben Scott has the flexibility to play guard as well. And then a left guard, which is a little bit surprising, but not surprising because I think he played a little bit more towards the end of the year last year, is Ethan Piper, right? Maybe we should have seen it coming. I think that when Ethan Piper went to the Big Ten Media Days, you couldn't really decide whether it was because he was a good mouthpiece for the program or he's gotten better. I think it's more the latter. And then the first part is actually just part of it, right? I think he's in better shape. Even though, I felt like he wasn't by no means out of shape, but I think he's physically stronger, looks a little bit leaner, kept his weight the same, is really driven. I think he got some confidence last year towards the end of the year by playing more and playing better. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for him, and I want your opinion, especially for him, is, he played defensive tackle in high school, came here and moved to the offense side of the ball. Now, in high school, you play both, but primarily defensive tackle. It's been consistency, right, for him. And the consistency necessarily isn't on the play, it's the mental, right? So you got to think, Ethan Piper's came a long way, right? He was in everybody's doghouse from the block PAT down in Oklahoma, got bum rush back there, went off of him, they scored. And now he's starting with a new coach that has a offensive line background with an offensive line coach with continuity. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think just out of the old line, I think we're kind of finally starting to see, like, a lot of these guys, we've been waiting to make an impact. Right. And with the linemen in particular, I think we get a little anxious. We got to look. Ethan Piper's getting his junior year. Same thing with Ben Scott, junior year. A lot of these guys are starting to get into those years. So now if they have a year and they're not producing, it's your junior year, you're kind of running out of time. When you're looking at your linemen, this is, I think, about the timeline you're kind of expecting. We get eager, but around Big Ten junior year, that's when it really should start clicking. So if Ethan Piper doesn't have a good year this year, then I start to get worried. But he's done what he needed to. Clock's ticking. Yeah. And I think junior year, this is when you got to start seeing that development.
Yeah, if you're trying to have a, I guess, out of nowhere good year, you want to have a older line, And let's face it, this offensive line has been much maligned. I'm not trying to rhyme here on Sunday, man, and I'm not trying to give you a sermon here and up here rapping, but they've been much maligned, right? Some has been their own doing. Some, I think, is just the easiest thing to do. Like blame the offensive line. Well, it's not always the offense, and I'm not making excuses for him.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 years ago down in Oklahoma, the amount of procedure penalties. I mean, jumping off sides, lining up wrong, all that stuff. That's on them because that's attention to detail. Like the coach can only say yell at you or go over the place so much. It's your choice to be jumping off the. I mean, we had guys going, false starts before the center even got under the center, or this quarterback even got under the center.
Yeah, that opening drive was 2 false starts.
It was like 85 yards, and you had like 75 yards in penalties. And we ended up punting from the same place we got the ball, right?
Yeah.
It was like Adrian run for 30. Oh, we got 2 penalties. And then Gabe Irvin before he got hurt, 10-yard run. Okay, we got a 5-yard penalty. Yep. It was like, let's punch you. All we did was like we punched somebody, and then we let them punch ourselves, punch them back twice. But now I think that they've, I felt at times last year, they played more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I felt like some of the offensive plays and schematic things, especially early in the year, and in particular, even that Rutgers game, I felt like they were put out there in a less advantageous position. I think the easiest thing for offensive linemen to do is run block, right? Now that comes down to communication. If they can really stop I call it easy access defensive or miscues up front, meaning at the point of attack, you either totally whiff a guy or you're not crisp and the timing is bad on a double team. So the play can't even get kind of started, right? Because as an offensive line, I think I would take the mentality of we are not going to lose the line of scrimmage. At the worst case scenario, we're going to have a stalemate, and then we're going to establish the line of scrimmage eventually, right? Whether it's a yard or not, right? Then that puts the onus on the quarterback, which would be Sims, and whoever's back there at the running back to make the second level miss. So if they can do that, and what they did at times, I think will help them. Then to the right guard position, you got Nuri Noeli coming back, right? And you got to look at it like, yeah, he was suspended all last year, but just look at it, he was hurt, right? Just say he went out there and got hurt, and then behind him you have Henry Lutovsky, who has shown the aggressiveness that you need, but he needs a little bit more technique, right? So, I will say this: when Nuri played, this is probably what was so disappointing for him and the team last year, and didn't help any coach, right? Is that when he was inserted in the lineup, right? And it was you got to think it was 2 years ago. The tempo and the intensity and the offensive production went up, right? And that's why people were so excited. And you kind of say, okay, now we see what we were getting when you transferred in from Colorado State, right? Took advantage of the opportunity. Suspended last year. I know he's been chomping at the bit. Seen him a few times. He looks good.
He looks bigger, stronger.
He looks phenomenal, right? He looks like, because it could go 2 ways. This is what people don't understand. You could just go in the tank, and then next thing you know, you gain like a bunch of bad weight. Then you're always fighting an uphill battle. He kind of stayed to the task and worked out. When I talked to him about it, I said, look, dude, you can't go back and change whatever you did prior, right? Football season does go by fast. Luckily for him, they didn't make a bowl game. So actually, you kind of once Matt Rule got hired, now you're back in there to square one, right? And so I think he's taken advantage of it and really embraced the new regime in the weight room. He's kind of a different leader. Where he'll keep you loose, but then he'll push your buttons a little bit. So that's what you need. And I think he's a good kind of different type of leader than Ben Scott, right? So that you got 2 guys that, kind of can bend there. And then at the tackle spots, I think we'll talk about both of them because I think there's some unique stuff there as well, is that 2 guys that have been the brunt of a lot of anger and angst. Everybody talks about their PFF rankings, right? Which is, I always wonder who is PFF, right? Who are these guys? Do you really watch Nebraska games? I highly doubtful, right? I think they just look at the box score. Oh, they didn't run the ball well. It's now. I will tell you, Bryce Benhart and Turner, they haven't helped themselves. But for Bryce, it's been more of the pre-snap penalties, the lack of finishing, all that type of stuff. And Turner as well, he's kind of battled the injury bug because you got to think, like, I think last year or the year before, he like tore his hamstring and then he could never really get in the weight room. So look, I will say this, from hamstring injuries, those things are tricky because you're always kind of playing and doing things like, you're always waiting for it to happen again because you never really know, even though they're healthy and maybe strong, you just still feel it. And sometimes it does take a year. Again, I'm not making any excuses for them, but I think both of those two, with the holdover of Coach Raiola and with Matt Rule and the continuity in that room, they should play a little bit better, right? And they should be better just by the simple fact of knowing what Coach Raiola expects, knowing that you're going to have a legitimate emphasis on running the ball, and with Coach Rule, with the expectations up front ramping up, right? So you expect this whole offensive line, the starters, right, to play better. Now the asterisks, and the asterisks are, I think I'd say these are players that when they either plays more or in one case gets healthier, it makes your offensive line and the fans sleep a little bit better. And there's three guys that I want to talk about. Is obviously Teddy Prohaska, right? He's just been battling it. He's just on a bad string of knick-knack injuries now, right? Had a back-to-back years where you're out for a season, but this one, I think he'll be available for this game. Probably not to his best ability, but I think he's working hard for it. So I think when he starts to get healthy, you're going to start hearing his name being in the rotation, which is good, right? He's a sophomore, 6'10", 325. The other guy at the same position, these other two guys, right? Both of them are freshmen. Sam Sledge and Gunnar Gatula. Both are early enrollees, I think, or at least I know Gunnar's are early enrollees. Sam isn't. When you watch them play, they don't look any different. Now look, Sam Sledge is 6'3", 285. Obviously, 290 would be great, but he's only a freshman. But he's been well coached in high school. He's aggressive. He's a legacy kid. He's a guy that when he plays, he's going to play the right way. And it's good actually for him to be under Ethan Piper, because Ethan is a good leader in the sense of he's going to show you the rights, wrongs, and how to do things, right? And so I think if you ever want a check in the good spot for their recruiting prowess and in-state recruiting, that's it. Then you got Gunnar Gatula, right, who came in as an early enrollee. When you watched him in the spring game, he didn't look any different. He's big enough. He looks pretty strong. He's got pretty good footwork and quickness, and has gotten a lot better since college. I think, to be honest with you, or since high school, excuse me. Sometimes when you make that leap from high school to college, it takes you a little while. I think he kind of ramped it up because he's like, man, I got to step it up, right? And he's done it. So the depth can be there, but we got to get a little bit more healthy, right? We don't really need to talk about the quarterback because everybody knows Jeff Sims is starting on this depth chart, okay? Which is a little bit different, right? But I always said that, remember we said where there's going to be some ors. So you got Heinrich Harburg or Chuba Purdy. I think it's just based on the situation, right? If you're going to have to throw it, I think they feel a little bit more comfortable with Chuba. If it's something where you can, it's 50-50 RPO and controlled passing game, Heinrich Harburg. And so we'll see, if one or both gets into the game in the situation. But I think that, that's a little bit interesting. I think and I'd like this coaching staff in the sense of they'll adjust their game plan to their personnel. I do believe they'll do that, right? So just by chance, say, Jeff Sims, has to run into the locker room for a series. Well, I think they have a plan for that. And
you hope so.
Right.
I think you want a plan just in case.
I'd be very disappointed, and I normally don't say this, is if Minnesota comes out and does something or something like that happens, and you say, well, we didn't prepare for that, like kind of like Illinois a couple weeks. Well, then that's half our playbook. That's at this point. I can't speak for Matt Rule. I just don't think that's going to happen, right? Or he just won't admit it out loud, which is probably the best thing to do, right?
I'd imagine they got a package prepared, kind of like what we saw with Logan Smothers in
I
Iowa.
think they have.
I
think what this coaching staff has done is that these kids will know where they stand or have a better idea where they stand when they get off that plane Wednesday and Wednesday night and Thursday. And then that comes from weeks prior. Everybody knows where they're standing right now. Nobody's waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning wondering what's going on. They're knowing right now, right? And then that brings us to the tight end spot. I've been singing this man's praise, young man's praise, since I've seen him play. And it's an or. So you have two starters right now. Obviously, you got Eric Gilbert that's kind of waiting in the wings. Which I look. I'm gonna say this real quick. I feel sorry for him, right? You put in your waiver. You don't want to put your personal business out there while you put in the waiver. You're here, still haven't had an answer before. It shouldn't take that long, right? Because when the NCAA wants to suspend you, I guarantee you they get a hold of you within 24 hours. Now, back to the guys that are on the depth chart. You got Nate Borkacher from Nebraska, and then you got Thomas Fedoni, former number 1 overall tight end recruit. Both of them, I think, have, again, done what they need to do. And so I think it's an or. They come out in 12 personnel. They're going to be there. I'm assuming they come out in 11 personnel. It's either or as well. I think, those guys are obviously unproven, right? Borkacher has obviously had more snaps and more success. Fedoni's been hurt. But I think that both of them will grasp the opportunity, and I think they're going to be Jeff Sims' best friend. Then we move to the position that I think is probably most sleepless nights, right? Is the wide receiver position, where the starters are Billy Kemp's in the slot, backed up by Joshua Fleek. So there's two seniors, right? Billy Kemp has been very successful at Virginia. And then you got Isaiah Garcia Castaneda with Ty Hahn backing him up. And we've seen IGC, and it's commendable for him, because he tapped out last year for whatever reason.
Yeah.
He's obviously came back and got things right. There hasn't been any waiver. Right.
Yeah, after I think it was that Oklahoma game. It was after that we knew he was
done. He was supposed to be in the transfer portal, then he just took the year off.
Yep.
But whatever it was, and you got to give Rule credit where he's actually figured it out and understanding where he's at, and he's taking advantage of it. So it's very easily he could have not been on the depth chart, but been on the team he's starting. So he's been productive.
What do you think his ceiling is? Because I wonder if there wasn't that huge splash at Northwestern where Casey Thompson was scrambling. If you remove that play from everyone's memory, do we still have the same thoughts about his ceiling?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit in between that and like the next two games, right? So, I think I think Billy Kemp's going to be the number 1 option, right? I think he's going to be number 2. I think as the season goes on, if he continues to work, his production will mount up, right? And so he's not probably a number 1. He's probably like a number 2. And in the number 1 outside the spot, oddly enough, and give him credit, man. He came in as a walk-on. I remember seeing him play for Creighton Prep. Really good athlete, is Alex Bullock. And he earned a scholarship this week. Right?
Yeah, Matt Rule said he put him on choice.
Yeah, put him on scholarships, came in and done some things. He's backed up by Marcus Washington, who's battling a little of the knick-knack injuries right now. But so right there, when you go in, look, you got to do what you got to do. You got to block on the edge, and you got to catch the balls that are thrown to you. So that's the one position that's probably has more question marks. And then the running back, Gabe Irvin is head and shoulders the starter. Ramir, I think, is kind of like the go-between. And then Anthony Grant is number 3. And with backed up by Emmett Johnson. And Emmett Johnson is on everybody's heels right now. So, I think the biggest thing coming out of this before we go to break is Anthony Grant being number 3. Matt Rule told you. And if you really listen to what he says, he's number 3 right now. You're pretty much telling you the reason why you're number 3, the reason why you ain't starting is because you've been fumbling.
Yeah.
And so when he tells you that, once we see you do the little things in practice, because Matt Rule's got enough experience. Is it the fumbles by great plays by players on defense, or you lack of ball technique? Once you shore up your ball technique, then we know you can run the ball. But you can't run the ball if it's always going to be anxiety whether you're going to fumble or not. So he's telling you a lot without telling you. He's telling you everything with only telling you a little bit. So I feel like they feel very comfortable with their top 2 guys, and Anthony Grant will get it together eventually. So that's where you're at on offense. No surprises really. For me, besides, well, you could say Marcus Washington, but he's been hurt all camp.
Yeah, he's just the guy you really hope gets healthy.
Right. Well, this is a good look. There ain't no next year.
It's just, with him, it's just I always feel like he's in that potential to really lead the wide receiver room. Like, I honestly thought this year Marcus Washington might be the #1 receiver, and it's just the injury bug.
Right.
It's a couple of years in a row now where we just haven't really gotten a full healthy year of Marcus Washington.
Yeah, even last year.
Yeah.
So, but then he came on last year, so that was like, okay, now we see it, and this is going to embrace the opportunity. Trey's gone, new opportunity, and you're still kind of on the shelf. And your best ability is your availability. And then sometimes you can't control it. I know he's fighting like heck to get back. And so if he's serviceable, it could be, look, he's got a big body, can make some catches. So
great hands. I've never seen him drop a pass.
Right. So if he can get some plays out of him and make a couple big time catches, doesn't matter whether he starts or not. So that's the offense. We're going to go to a quick break and then come back and dive into this defense, which has been, I wouldn't say much maligned, but a lot of interesting things from this depth chart. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People City Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Old School with DP and J.
They have the run and gun offense coming in. A new head coach that's been given the longest runway of any coach in Wisconsin, new coach in Wisconsin history, to change the program to Cincinnati way, and a new defensive philosophy. They're ripe for the picking.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
I'm Chris Jackmick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is "My job is people, everyone is my business." But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jackmick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Veterans, do you know what local, state, and federal benefits and services you're eligible to receive? Do you want help navigating the application or appeals process? Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. You've served our country, now let us serve you. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
What happens when students come to school every day on time and ready to learn? They improve academically, become more responsible, manage their time well, and learn the value of education. Whether your child is starting preschool or preparing to graduate, family support and a great attitude towards education is important. Help your child come to school every day ready to learn. Make this the best school year yet.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de the Alzheimer's Association y the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We're back, second segment. This is Jay Foreman, your hostess with the mostest, right? Isn't that what they say, Harrison? Isn't that what you guys say?
Yeah, all the time, every day.
We got a YouTube comment or question. Simeon in Bangkok asks, what do you think Minnesota will not worry about when playing us this week? In other words, what are they expecting to be superior at compared to the Huskers at doing? I think Minnesota is going to try to Minnesota, and they're going to try to beat you up and try to out-physical you. And it's not I wouldn't say like a maul you type of like Wisconsin. They'll just out-execute you. They they wedge block and do some gap blocking. They're just going to test you whether you mentally will do the same thing over and over and over with a physical mentality and try to establish the run game. Obviously, timely passing game. I do feel that they're going to try to spread us out a little bit more, considering that the offensive firepower they potentially have coming back, and they feel very confident in the quarterback because he's more of a dual threat quarterback than Tanner Morgan. But they don't have Mo Ibrahim back there, so he was the ultimate equalizer and gave the whole team confidence. I talked about it on numerous times on Old School that from my perspective, when I played here at Nebraska. And, whether it was Lawrence Phillips, Amon Green, Clinton Childs, Damon Benning, Correll Buckhalter, D'Angelo Evans, Thunder Dan Alexander, anybody, we always knew that what they were bringing. So when it became 3rd and 1, the expectation and the comfort that we had that they were going to get it and then also wear their team out. And so, that is gone from Minnesota. It seemed like Mo Ibrahim and Morgan have been there for like 50 years. Yeah. They're gone. And so a lot of that continuity is gone. That is taxing on a head coach and PJ Fleck. You have two co-offensive coordinators. So that's going to be very unique. So what they're going to try to do is do what they've always done. Out-execute Nebraska up front, test our discipline and our principles. It'll be interesting to see how we handle that. And then from there, if they feel like if they're making way there, then they feel like they could throw the ball all over the place because then they feel like they have control of the game. And so I don't think that'll necessarily happen to the same clip because I think Nebraska is going to be prepared for it and obviously be able to adjust, which has been the biggest difference. And so I think they'll be fine, but it's all going to be dependent on how we play up front, in the front 6 or 7, whatever you want to look at it. And so that's a good leeway right into the defensive depth chart. Ty Robinson starting. He's a junior and is the year that he has to be the man, right? Which is great for him. Great opportunity. Backed up by Kay Whalen, who was a JUCO transfer. He's shown some pop, and he's shown pop in his recruiting tape. So I think, depending on the front, I think those two guys can either play, obviously Waylon behind him, or in combination in the 4-man front. I think Waylon can get to the quarterback a little bit, and then in the middle, you saw glimpses of him playing a little bit better last year. And I think when you see Nash, obviously wearing number 0 because he's one of the ones that got the single digits. He's in way better shape than he was last year, and it's a continued thing that he dedicated himself to get leaner, which is going to allow him to play physical for longer periods of time and be more effective as a player. I think he's embraced his role where he's at, and I think he's came out of his shell at times last year. It's just got to be a technique thing, and I think Pot Roast, their defensive line coach, will do. Terrence Knighton, no, I don't know if he likes being called Pot Roast, but Terrence Knighton, Coach Knighton, has done a good job of teaching him and Raekwon Buckley different techniques that he's played, and I'm sure he's played in somewhat of this system. 3-4, knows the ins and outs of it. So I think the production of the defense is going to be predicated on those two playing consistently, because you have to play consistently so the guys behind you can play. And another one, this is probably the biggest surprise or out of nowhere, right? Is Blaise Gunnerson starting, and is Blaise Gunnerson or Cam Linhart? Cam Linhart from IMG, big-time recruit with the previous staff, decommitted, recommitted, and signed, so forth, early enrollee. You can see why he was a 4-star recruit out of IMG. Very mature, if you've listened to some of his interviews. And the way that he's played, you can tell he's been coached at a pretty high level coming out of high school, so his transition has been pretty smooth, right? He's very focused, young man, 6'3", 250. But Blaise Gunnerson, you got to give him credit, right? He battled the injury bug and kind of, calf injury, hip injury, hamstring, maybe his shoulder, and then finally I think he's gotten healthy at a good weight for him in a good scheme that allows him to kind of, just put his hand in the dirt and go. So I think both of those two, for different reasons, have been surprises, right? They probably weren't guys you weren't expecting to start. Obviously, Colton Feast decided not to come back, or a mutual agreement. But then you think Blaise, who kind of was a backup role in an outside rusher, that goes into a 3-man front, probably like a little bit on the open side, 3-man front, and is backed up or co-starter with Cam Linhart. And Cam Linhart coming in, playing as a freshman. Coach Rule, Coach White, Terrence Knighton, all have said, if you're a young guy that's shown that you want to play or can play and consistently want to play, and we feel that you can handle the defensive scheme-wise, they're not going to hold you back. There's no 4-game rule for him. He's going to be playing every week. Now, whether he's starting or not, depends on, how Blaise plays, but then also depends on how he plays. So I imagine Blaise will be out there first because he has more experience. But Cam Linhart will be in there very soon, or very quickly, and that's good.
Yeah, they seem to really like him.
Well, I mean,
he's putting in the work, like you said. It's
Yeah.
going to be a matter of time. If he gets in there and pops off, he's going to be playing a lot.
Yeah, this is the one thing about coaches. Every coach has his favorites, right? I've coached. You got your favorites, but generally, my favorite players are the ones that play hard and practice hard, and do what they need to do. Not always what it's not like do what I don't need you to kiss my butt. I just like players that love, in this case, football, and show up every day, and that's what he's done. And so that's commendable for him, and it's also right now commendable for Blaise too, because he's came a long way. He was one of those guys, would he make it or not? He's accepted the challenge, and that's what Matt Rule wants. Matt Rule wants guys. He's going to give you an opportunity, but he wants you to earn it and raise your level of play and expectation. I think Blaise has done it. Good for him. And then to the linebacker room, we'll throw the Jack in there too, right? So they run a 3-3-5. Suppose there'll be in a lot of 4-man front, especially against Minnesota. Maybe some 5-man front, 3-4 look, just because Minnesota's going to try to. They're just a physical team.
Yeah.
If you're not just going to line up with 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs and think you're going to, do well. You got to set the edge, hold the point of attack. But the 3 guys and the 2 linebackers in the Jack position, I'm going to go with the most interesting depth chart right off the get-go. And it's Chief Borders is listed at the top, or MJ Sherman. Right, Jamar Butler's been a little dinged up, right?
Yep.
And he's kind of and he's or he had been out there. So he's coming back from a little bit of it being dinged up. But the fact that Chief Borders is listed, like you could say right? But the guy at top is generally the starter.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, I can't speak for the team. I just know when I was a co-starter, it was Jay Foreman or somebody else or Jay Foreman. The guy that was first is the starter. So Chief Borders, when you go back to the spring game, you didn't see much, right? You see him out there and you're like, did he make any plays? All off season, yeah, you see him. He's very, very active on social media, but we didn't see any plays. Right? Who was always featured? Right? MJ Sherman, am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
So it was always a foregone conclusion. 2-time national champion, right? Coming in leadership role. You had the video where the defense got shown off the field. He said, "We're not leaving." But Chief is, according to this, okay. I'm looking at it as if I'm an offensive coordinator, right, or a defensive guy looking at who's starting. The guy that's at top starting. So let's just assume Chief is starting. MJ's backing up. We have some breaking news, not breaking news, but some info from YouTube. We appreciate your comments on YouTube, and thanks, Steve. He says he thinks that Rule said the top guy in or was based on the alphabet. Okay. All right. Well, who knows? Well, at the end of the day, Chief Borders is going to
get a shot.
Yeah. He came a long way because Jamar Butler was ahead of him, when they did the spring. So I do know this from when they were out there in the spring. Jamari and MJ Sherman were together with the ones.
Well, we talked about it. We didn't hear much about Chief Borders, and I think it was probably a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were kind of trying to figure out where is he sitting at.
Yeah.
So
was he even going to be on here?
Yeah.
Was he? Yeah. And so now for him to be on here, all I'm saying is commendable. So good on him. The depth seems like it's going to be there. Now they got to play come Thursday night. The two starters on the inside, nothing new because Nick is once healthy. He's their leader. He's probably going to be a 2-down linebacker. Then you got Luke. Quite possibly could be in the record books that when he's done. He got a single digit. Same with Nick. The two guys behind him now have done unique things here. John Bullock, his brother Alex, earned a single digit. When you see John, he looks like a linebacker. Had a great offseason and has made a lot of plays. Gives him flexibility, right? Also behind Nick at linebacker, okay, is Javen Wright. Battled some unforeseen health issues, and now he's playing linebacker. I think it's a position that he's going to excel at, and he can play the jack as well. He gives you some flexibility.
Yeah.
He gives you some length and playmaking ability, and he's only going to get bigger, faster, and stronger as his body matures. Yes, Douglas, I didn't know simple alphabetical order, but the fact that these guys are in there in the mix, there's some that just have been a surprise to me, and then you got the rover, which is Isaac Gifford, which we kind of felt like that was there. He's another guy that earned single digits. Number 2, Phelan Sanford, who's been really good on special teams and been a guy that they've glowed about. Tony White is talking about his speed and his physicality, throwing his body around. So you have two of the same, right? Gifford, a local kid, earned his way onto the team scholarship, been a really good special teams player and situational player. I think he played more last year under Bill Bush and is provided a physical presence. And I think he potentially could excel at that rover position. The corners are locked in. Quentin Newsom, Tommy Hill backing him up, who's gotten out of his own way, which is really good. And then Malcolm Hartzog, who's done really well. And then he has like his twin, Dwight Boodle II. Obviously, his brother is playing for the Chiefs, but Dwight Boodle is 5'9", 170. Hartzog is 5'9", 175. So if you 5'9", 165 to 75 pounds, you're starting out there at corner. And then the two safety positions, right? This is it right here. Miles Farmer left. Buford's hurt. So you got to think you got two guys that started last year. One will be back and one will not be back. Deshaun Singleton, who hardly played last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially took that spot. Matt Rule said we expected him to be a backup. He's going to be one of our best defensive players. And from what I've seen, he's popping, hitting, and showing up. Looks a lot faster. Looks like he did off his recruiting tape, which is great because he gives you some length and playmaking ability. Legit 6'3", 205 with a physical presence. I like that. And then Omar Brown, I think he got hurt last year, came from Northern Iowa. was making some noise in camp early in the year. He's starting at the other safety position, but one of the best athletes that had I think he had like a unique or weird like knee condition in the first year. Kobe Bretz from Omaha West Side, battled, wonder where he would fit in, considering that he had Buford and Farmer at the beginning of the offseason. Would he make this too deep? Obviously, he's done some things to be a backup, and he'll be in the game as well. So that's good. And then you got Corey Collier, right? A sophomore. So you got good depth. You got a senior in Omar Brown, sophomore Bretz, a junior in Singleton, Corey Collier, a transfer in from Florida, right? A transfer portal guy. So you're getting your good transfer portal money's worth. He's backing up at a safety. And I think what you're going to see, and Tony White has said it, you're going to not just see 11 guys eating up all the snaps. All these guys are going to play, if they're healthy, right? Now, if you got a combination of playing good, then that's just the way it is. But, you see some freshmen in there, obviously with Lynn Hart and Dwight Boodle, but then you see some sophomores in there. So when you talk about rebuilding versus reloading, you want to reload, right? You don't always want to be in rebuild mode, and that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to build up depth. And if you didn't get to see the last look in, Matt Rule said that.
Yeah, that was a good, I'd say out of all the episodes so far, that one had the craziest amount of events going on.
Yeah, well, he just told you, look, dude, if you think you're just going to come, because what he's trying to do, and I'll say this before we go to break, what he's trying to do is get it out of your system that once the season starts, and if you're not playing, you're chilling. That's how he got here. The lack of development. Every day you have to play, and you got to get better because you never know when you're going to be called upon. He has told you if you're a young player, you're going to be called upon, because if you don't show the ability to continue to get better, or if you're not up to standard, well, that's how guys end up here in the transfer portal through high school signing day, period. The best of the best are going to play, and he's creating internal competition because if you handle your business, it's very simple. You will play. Easy. Just go do it, but you got to do it every day. So that's the defense. I think, though, the defense is going to have to lead the way, especially in the first couple series, first quarter and a half, and the offense has got to hold their head above water. And the closer the game, I think it favors Nebraska because I think that this coach can coach them through kind of a rocky start or a sticky situation. I think they got enough experience to kind of go toe-to-toe with sleeky or silky smooth cat up there in PJ Fleck. So with that being said, we're going to come back and give you our game prediction. This is Jay Foreman. Inside the Huddle. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Hey guys, Jake Sorensen here from Early Break. The garage door at our house has been needing replacement for a couple years, and a few months ago, we finally did something about it. Steve's Garage Doors and Services was great through the whole process in providing options and also going to the next level to get a door that was approved by our HOA. And best of all, the removal of the old door and installation of the new door was done smoothly with no issues. Call Steve's Garage Doors and Services today at 402-480-9462.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Our lives only have so much time. But if you smoke, you have less. Your life could be 10 years shorter. And the time you do have is often filled with health problems. Shortness of breath, asthma, COPD, and cancer. But the minute you quit, your body starts healing.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, Playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
I wanted to quit for so long, but I didn't know where to start.
I was afraid of what people would think, but then I found the right support to start my recovery journey. 1 in 14 Americans reports experiencing a substance use disorder, a treatable medical condition. Treatment can take many forms, so there are a variety of options to explore and find the one that works best for you. Recovery from drug addiction is possible.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hey, you got any gum?
Yeah, check my backpack.
What's this?
Oh, that's naloxone. It can reverse an opioid overdose. I decided to always keep it on me after my friend almost died. It saved his life.
I'm so sorry. That makes me want to have it with me too.
You totally should. Check the pharmacy. It was actually really easy to get and it's easy to use.
I definitely will. Thanks.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professional skills and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit serve.nebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
We're back, short segment here before we turn it over to Pete Ferguson. Bigger than the was it bigger than the game?
Bigger than the score.
Bigger than the score. Keep thinking of game week, man. My bad. Bigger than the score. Pete does some great things, man. He's a great dude. Just meeting him here on a consistent basis, obviously. Early morning, setting the party off, but then he takes the baton and takes it on home. Harrison, what do you think? What's your prediction for the game?
I don't know if we come out with the win. Honestly, I think it's going to be close. I think it's just like the last 3 years. I think it's decided within 7. I can definitely see it going either ways. I'm not surprised if Nebraska wins, but I just think the way it's been year one, you said it before, Minnesota's program has kind of been up and rolling for a while now.
Yeah.
Despite all the news that came out in the Big Ten media days about being quote unquote cult, I don't really think that's the locker room vibe. I think those guys trust each other. I think year week one, that's not necessarily a team you want to see. They're going to be up and rolling. I think it's going to be close. I think Nebraska probably falls short. I'm going to go 21-24.
Yeah, I think I'm right along there with you. I think Nebraska could and should win. I think that if it was the second game or the third game, I think Nebraska would win, hands down. I think the difference is that there's just I think our best, curveball is that
3-3-5.
Well, it's just the unknown, right? You don't know. They don't know much about Jeff Sims. They don't know much about Matt Rule in the Big Ten, the new Matt Rule or whatever. You can go back and look at Baylor, but that was such a long time ago. They don't know much about Tony White, all that. So that's our best attribute. Then you don't know how much better our offensive line has gotten better. Gabe Irvin, you didn't really see much of him. The defensive players, they don't know much about that. But I think Minnesota just has a little bit more experience than some of the younger guys of just showing up and playing, right? So I think that they pull out a game. I think it's going to be like 27-21. I'd be very surprised if it's a blowout game.
It's hard. It's Minnesota. Try to blow out a Minnesota or a Wisconsin or an Illinois. They're going to eat clock. They make it so it's nearly impossible.
Minnesota could be explosive if this quarterback comes out and plays the game of his life. But I just think that Nebraska, will coach them well and keep them in the game. I just think that Minnesota is just more experienced in doing this right now. So I think they're going to win. It'd be 27-21. I think that'll be the score. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska wins 27-21. I think the one thing that's going to be the most interesting thing to me is how PJ Fleck in Minnesota handles having co-offensive coordinators. I've never seen that work.
That's true. Hopefully that provides problematic. We kind of saw a little bit with Scott Frost when we're trying to figure out, is he calling the plays? Is it Whipple calling the plays? That was the closest thing we ever got.
And it never worked. It worked. Ohio State, before they got Jim Knowles, they had co-defensive coordinators. It didn't work. They both got fired or repositioned, and they're gone. In this isn't the second year doing it. This is new. Heck, even here when Lubick was the passing game coordinator and Greg Austin was the run game coordinator, and then when you have Scott was maybe calling some of the plays anyway, so the continuity wasn't there. I think PJ Fleck have a better handle on it than they do it, but I think if the roles are not defined on who is number one caller and when you're calling it, that could play to Nebraska's advantage. I think it's going to be a close game. I think in hope Nebraska will win. I think if I was betting $5, I'm not a betting man, that I just will bet on the known. That doesn't mean I don't believe in the staff or anything like that. I'm just, when you're asking my honest opinion, I'm gonna give it to you. I think, again, it's a hard. I think if Nebraska was able to get them at home, it's just kind of the home field advantage. What do they say? What the odd thing is, 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is. It's just essentially 3 points and a field goal for Minnesota.
Yeah, and that's why it's exactly why I have Minnesota.
Yeah, so that's it. And but I'm excited though, man. I've been watching all those games. I even watched USC last night. They still have not got their defense fixed.
I was watching that.
It's optional.
San Jose State was giving them the business.
They were giving them the business, and then that San Jose State just got out of their sorts and had a couple defensive breakdowns. I watched Louisiana Tech last night. They won't be you can't sleep on them. So I was just watching any games out there. I even watched Vanderbilt against Hawaii.
Okay, yeah, I didn't touch that.
Vanderbilt got some cool jerseys.
Was the stadium done? I know that was a big concern for them.
It was kind of done.
Okay,
but it looked better. They had a lot of fans there for them, and they knew they'd probably show up. We're going to beat Hawaii. I watched all the games. Watched a little Noah Walters. Watched a little bit of Jacksonville State. So a little Nebraska connection. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Go Huskers. We'll holler at you next week. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman.